along with Congressman, Army, Green Beret veteran Michael Waltz. We also have Truth Social CEO, the big boss, Devin Nunes. So we're going to... Hey, Michael, move your ass. I introduced you a little while ago. What do you think you are, a congressman or something like that? This is bullshit, okay?
Acting like I'm in the army.
What's going on? So, guys...
I get to snuggle with you two?
We were just talking with Peter Navarro. I'm sure, Devin, you probably dealt with Peter when you were back in Congress before you went over to the Truth Social. A great guy, but a victim of Democrat lawfare. He was one of the... I mean, they just, under appeal, still put him in prison 4 months. How do we make sure Joe Biden doesn't continue to weaponize the DOJ from now until January? How do we stop that? I'm going to you, Waltz, because you're actually in Congress.
It's all Waltz's fault.
Devin, you can't do crap. You're now, Devin, you're corporate now.
He was a victim of it.
Devin was a victim. Devin was the only guy that understood that Russia was a hoax. He demonstrably proved it, and it didn't matter. They vilified him. They leaked stuff on him. It was pretty brutal.
Doxed his phone
but it's
numbers.
always fun, though, too. The best leak, though, was when you were down in our committee being interviewed, and before you even got out for a break, and there was already fake news that has out there. It would leak
but
within
they
minutes.
took my phone, so I didn't even know. But I got out at like 7:30 that night after like 10 hours of testimony, and I'm scrolling back throughout the day on Twitter, and like literally, bathroom break was at 9:30, 9:32.
Yeah.
Trump Jr. It was Adam Schiff, obviously.
You mean you actually complied with a subpoena?
I know. It's hard to believe.
Oh.
It's hard to believe. It's
I
almost
hate to
like
admit
there's
this, but I was
rules
the one
for
who
thee.
subpoenaed him.
But he complied.
I did comply. I did 50 hours of testimony.
But during that investigation, we subpoenaed everybody because we didn't have anything to hide, right? I mean, we wanted everybody to come forward and give testimony. And ironically, you and everybody else that was involved, well, not involved because it was a hoax.
Yep.
All of the Trump people came in. The FBI refused. The FBI, most of them refused to come in. It wasn't until later that we found out most of the agents that were involved, and that was through some of the work that Chuck Grassley did and others. And it was, sad state of affairs. But sorry about that subpoena.
You worked for Grassley, right?
I did.
And obviously, as a legal guy, what do you think we can do to prevent that from happening? Or is it just doesn't matter? They just control all of that. They're willing to do it, even if there's not an explicit ask. The DOJ knows to be the lapdog. Whether it's they're protecting Hunter Biden, whether they're protecting Joe Biden, whether they're protecting Jill Biden, all the other Bidens that are on CCP payrolls. It's shocking because I know it would be a real problem if it was me, and yet, if it's not going to be enforced, what's the purpose of even having these laws?
Let's look at President Biden's campaign strategy. It is to label your father a fascist dictator who must be stopped at all costs.
Yeah.
And then you have a Biden Justice Department and these Biden Democrat prosecutors and lawyers who have tried to bankrupt him. They've tried to put him in prison for the rest of his life. They've tried to take him off the ballot. And one of his opponents just tried to kill him. And it was by the grace of God. 1 centimeter and 1 millisecond would be a much different place today.
Yeah.
Saturday is directly on Biden's doorstep, right? His rhetoric, his campaign strategy, where Trump is a fascist dictator who must be stopped at all costs.
Ends justify the means.
That led to Saturday, and I know that's controversial, but I don't care. And what needs to happen is,
by the way, it's not controversial. It's fact, right? I mean,
it's common sense.
They try to beat him every which way. They tried to impeach him twice. They've tried to bankrupt him. They've tried to take away his businesses. They've constantly tried to jail him. One of those offenses literally carries the death penalty possibly with it. I mean, what's next in the natural evolution? I was on with Bongino and Tucker Carlson last night on Dan's podcast. They were on mine, and then we rolled into theirs, so I can't remember which one we were talking about. But, of course that was next. Tucker, Dan, they all said it. This was a couple months ago. Of course and they were ridiculed, and you're conspiracy theorists, and I did this last year. Of course that could happen. What are you talking about? Of course it leads to that.
Yeah, when
they've dehumanized someone. I mean, who wouldn't go back, and kill baby Hitler if you knew it was coming?
Yeah,
you'd almost have a moral obligation to. And so they've created that where they've allowed that to happen. But what you guys don't know, I started the show 20 minutes early because Marsha Blackburn just came in here, senator from Tennessee. And she goes, I just got off a call
with Cheeto,
with the head of the Secret Service, with some of the people, I guess, at DOJ or FBI.
Yep.
And they knew at 5:51 there was a dude with a rangefinder and a suspicious bag, I guess, that was marked. At 5:53, they knew that person was on a rooftop. My father went onto the stage at 6 p.m. So 9 minutes after they knew there was a credible threat, they still let him go on the stage. Then he was on the stage for 11 minutes before the first shots were fired. I know, because I've seen it. They pulled him off a stage when they once heard about a possible threat somewhere else. They didn't actually have a witness. They didn't have a thing. They got a note and they weren't sure. How they let him go on. Like, I was pissed off for the last couple of days. This is now worse. They wouldn't take Marsha's questions. Hit pound 2 to ask a question. They wouldn't take Marsha's question. They didn't take Ted Cruz's question. They didn't take Mike Lee's question. All Republican, strong Republicans. I wonder why.
Shocker.
I wonder why.
No, we were on the call. They had a
were you on that call
as well?
Because, like,
and,
I thought
what
that
was unclear.
They figured it out. Once he started speaking, and they were I'm like, oh my God, they let him go on the stage. That caused someone's life to end because that guy wasn't going to shoot if Trump wasn't on the stage. He was waiting for Trump.
Right.
By letting that happen, even though we were blessed to miss my father, a great American lost their lives, and that's on those guys.
No, that's right. What's unclear, and when you say they knew, it was the local law enforcement that was new. It was unclear if that was immediately communicated to the team, because as you know, the protocol is gun, suspicion package, hold, or pull him immediately. And so the communication back to the core close-in protection is still unclear. But Don, I think this is a wholly different issue. There's the weaponization that we've seen of throwing everything they've got at him. This is a different kind of weaponization. I'm going to throw out there weaponization by denial and let other people deny him the protection that he deserves, and then let other people go at it that have been inspired by
some of your
Biden's
colleagues
rhetoric.
have done that. I mean, there are 9 or 11 Democrat congressmen that wanted to sign. There's legislation right now to literally strip my father of his Secret Service detail. What purpose could Clinton still has a detail? Any living president still has a detail. They want to strip. What else could they possibly expect happens of that?
But here's what's going to come out.
Weakness to allow this to happen.
We have Cheadle coming to the Oversight Committee on Monday. We had to subpoena her. She wouldn't come voluntarily. So just leave that for what it is.
But the buck stops with her, right? She said that.
Yeah, of course. Although I'm staying,
wink,
even though the
wink,
investigation's not over.
Wink.
Is they budget for a former protections detail, and that's it. Whether it's Jimmy Carter sitting in an old folks home, or whether it's your father who has multiple residences, rallies every week, high level of threat. And when they kept, these are what the agents are telling me, when they kept requesting more, what they got back from the headquarters is, we're not going to fund all these extra agents for all of his extra rallies. That's not in our budget. And so that makes then the core protective detail reliant on local law enforcement, and God bless them, but they are not trained to the same level.
It's different. I've had a Secret Service detail. I understand exactly what they do, but they're training for that 0.02%. Most law enforcement, they're not thinking about snipers. That's not what they do, right? On a day-to-day basis, they're not.
Listen, let's
thinking
be honest,
about securing something.
We've been to a ton of rallies. I love our law enforcement. But they love your dad.
Oh,
and half
100%.
of them I've looked over.
You know how many selfies I've taken this week?
But rather
law
than
enforcement
facing
guys,
out,
like, can we do it?
Rather than facing out and watching the perimeter, they're watching and laughing with their dad. Right? I mean, it just let's be honest. Let's be candid.
The other part I'd love you to find out, perhaps, because you're right. A former president gets a certain level of protection, whether it's Jimmy Carter in an old age home, Trump, young, vibrant, everywhere. But it's different now because Trump has also been the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party now for 6 months. That's different. Right there is
that doesn't fit in the bureaucrat's
The second
formula.
that happens, though, they beef these things up. When you're the presumptive nominee of the major party, there's an automatic extra. It doesn't just change. The other day when Eric and I got to throw the Florida delegation to throw him over the delegate count to make him the official. Once it's known that he's official, that's when that kicks in. Because I saw that last time around. Okay, but when he was president, it was obviously a huge detail, but in 2016, when he became the presumptive nominee, that detail grew. He had a detail before he was that, but it was a smaller footprint. Once he was the guy, it changes.
Watch, next week, you're going to see, because it fits into their little box formula, regardless of the magnitude of the threat, domestic threat, foreign threat. The Iranian threat, by the way, has been around for years. Robert O'Brien, as National Security Advisor, is now public. Many of us have known this and been fighting with the service about it, had his pulled completely regardless of the threat. And so what I'm going to do next week and go down to Devin's old skiff and say, show me the new salacious Iranian threat. I think it's a head fake.
Yeah.
I think it's completely a head fake.
Well, by the way, it wouldn't surprise me. I said it. I got a lot of crap the other day or yesterday. I've done so much live streaming I don't even know. But I basically said, like, you mean there's a credible threat from Iran? By the way, we had one because I knew about it because I had a Secret Service detail when my father was president. There was a credible threat of them trying to go after the family. That was real. I was told that. But isn't that sort of like a great endorsement? Like when your biggest enemies don't want you to become president, when they want to make sure you, isn't that like, doesn't it almost tell you everything you need to know about? Like, I'm like, I don't know. Like they want Joe Biden to be president because he'll be weak on them. He'll let them make billions. He'll pull off all the sanctions. It's sort of lunacy, right?
Well, for me, what's the Iranian threat has only gotten worse because of the open border. I mean, now there's, I mean, even when I was still in Congress, I went down to the border a couple times. I think, matter of fact, Mike, I think you and I were together.
Yep.
But I mean, we had people from every damn country around the planet just walking through.
Well, the sleeper cells are scary, Devin.
There's got to be sleeper cell, and there's an Iranian sleeper
rolled up
cell,
one.
maybe multiple
ISIS
Iranian sleeper cells,
cell
and there's
as well.
probably sleeper cells from all kinds of countries.
Well, guys, we got some breaking news. Mike, I'm going to actually ask you about this one because you'll be able to get a. Well, I'll go to Davis on this one because he'll go a little bit more conspiratorial because I think it's obvious. But we have breaking news: Joe Biden apparently has tested positive for COVID. Here we go again. And by the way, it's ahead of major conferences overseas. Now, I have my opinion of why maybe Joe Biden didn't really get COVID, but maybe they don't want him on a world stage anymore. Mike, I'd love your thoughts on this one because have at it. Have at it, Mike.
I think Joe Biden tested positive for dementia, right? And if they don't want him on the stage because he's going to go up there.
So much more, by the way. It's like,
maybe he'll have to sit on the stage too long. He doesn't have diapers to last that long. Who knows? But this guy is clearly not fit to be the president of the United States. I mean, this guy can't get on a world stage without embarrassing us.
Yeah. But Mike, we saw, Judge Cannon, the rule in Florida the other day that Jack Smith improperly appointed as counsel and, threw out the documents case. Kind of a big one because that was one that a lot of people actually feared was the most dangerous. That was the one where the FBI's hostage rescue team had to kick in the doors at Mar-a-Lago, guns ablazing, because the hostage, it's like using SEAL Team 6 to take your kid to kindergarten. It seems aggressive, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Why did that happen? Explain it to sort of, in non-legalese terms to how do I tell that to a 4-year-old so that people understand what it means? And what are the implications on some of the other cases? What does that do to Jack Smith in D.C. and the others?
So Judge Cannon correctly said that the Office of Special Counsel is unconstitutional because in order for there to be officers of the United States, they have to be created by Congress. And they also have to be funded by Congress. And what they've done with this special counsel is after Ken started his investigation of Clinton, the Office of Independent Counsel created by Congress was intentionally allowed to lapse because people were upset about the Starr investigation. Well, the Justice Department did not like that, and so they tried to do an end run around Congress and create the special counsel through fiat, through regulation. Well, that violates the Constitution. It violates the appointment clause of the Constitution where the president must nominate, the Senate must confirm, the president must appoint officers of the United States, and it also violates the appropriations clause where Congress has to fund these, and these special counsel through this fiat essentially has an unlimited budget. So this special counsel investigation in Florida is gone. If they want to bring new charges, go through a U.S. attorney.
So that's the question.
Terms, you can't make up positions.
Yeah.
You can't just make them up. Can I make a prediction on the COVID?
Yeah.
This is going to be Biden basement 2.0. This is going to be the longest case of COVID. This is going to be a 4-month
When you say long COVID, this is
super long.
Really freaking long COVID.
This is the path back to the basement.
We may see him emerge on January or November 6th.
So I have a couple questions for Mike Davis. So on the documents hoax, the famous picture where the FBI spread out those documents all over the ground.
Doctored evidence.
doctored evidence. I mean, that's exactly, I mean, that was like planting evidence. I mean, 101, I would think. I mean, if that was not how they found him, then why would they spread him out and do that? I mean, that should have been, and I don't know if the judge ever ruled, but the second question would be, to build on that, is how does it impact the J6 cases, which are already mucked up, but this should also impact them also, right?
Yeah, so Judge Cannon's decision is binding on the Southern District of Florida. It's persuasive for Judge Chutkan in D.C., and Judge Chutkan is a radical Obama judge, and there's no way in hell she's going to dismiss this case.
She limited her scope to basically that case, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is
well, it also gets rid of a lot of testimony and stuff like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Here's the bigger problem. That Jack Smith, along with Bragg up in New York, they used evidence that the Supreme Court said they can't use. They just used evidence of President Trump's conversations with his top White House advisors.
That is official capacity.
Yes, that's right. It's subject to presidential immunity, so that's why Mershon has to declare a mistrial in New York. He won't because he's a hack, but he has to declare a mistrial in New York. If he does not declare a mistrial, Trump can very quickly get that case up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and there's no doubt in my mind they're going to rule for Trump on that. With Judge Cannon's case, that case is done. Judge Chutkan's case, there's not much of a case left. After the Fisher decision on January 6th, the 2 of the 4 charges are largely gutted on obstruction, where Jack Smith misapplied a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute to go after corporate fraud, to go after Trump and his January 6th supporters. So half of the case is gutted there, and then probably another 30% is gutted because of presidential immunity, right? That you can't charge a president criminally for his official acts, just like you can't charge judges or members of Congress, right? And so the whole case may have to be thrown out because, remember, Jack Smith also presented evidence to the grand jury that was subject to presidential immunity. So they may have to have that whole case kicked. The bottom line is this. They came at Trump with everything they had legally, and Trump beat him, right? He dodged the legal bullet. He dodged the actual bullet. He's going to win in a landslide on November 5th. He's going to get back into the White House on January 20th, and his acting attorney general should dismiss these charges on day one, fire Jack Smith, and open their own investigation.
His acting attorney general?
No, I'm going to be the viceroy, Don. You're going to get me in trouble. I don't want to be accountable to courts or Congress. I want to be the viceroy.
Mike Davis will likely never be attorney general because I'd say.
Come in a little hot on Twitter.
Yeah, come in a little hot. I mean, I think you're right, actually. But, the problem is, with all the rhinos in the Senate, you're getting the one obligatory, head nod from Chuck Grassley.
I will say that. I was the chief counsel for nominations. I know how the process works. And I have a 0% chance I would get one vote, a pity vote from Chuck Grassley, my former boss, and it would ruin his 65-year political career. So I'm just going to be the viceroy.
But honestly, I think given the weaponization that we've seen, Devin, that you've witnessed, they've done it to you even as well, and they stonewalled you from actually getting an investigation done as it related to Russia. Mike, who is someone that would be tough enough to do that, but is also confirmable? Who would your list of who would your top 3 be? I mean, I think you put him in as acting because then you get someone more aggressive naturally because they just want to get that guy the hell out of that job because
there are many good people. Who I really like is Mark Paoletta, who used to be one of President Trump's top lawyers in the White House. He's fantastic. He's probably in his late 50s. He has a great family, great wife, great kids. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to go get a job after he does the job. He knows how the process works. He's very close to Justice Clarence Thomas. The guy's a savage. He'd be great for the job. He'd have a fiery confirmation, but it would not be epic like my confirmation would be. My failed confirmation.
By the way, I would just live stream that for like great. 3 days of just.
It would be epic, and they would come after me, and I would love it. It would be fantastic. I also like Jeff Clark. He might have a hard time getting confirmed, but he would be a fantastic, White House counsel. There are so many good people who could fill these jobs because we have a good bench, right? Yeah. The other side does not have a good bench.
Right. Congressman Waltz, you were with the 13 Gold Star families from the Afghan withdrawal, that disaster, at Abbey Gate. Talk about how do those people feel, given just how...
I'm going to talk about them tonight.
Oh, that's great. You're speaking tonight as well.
I'm talking about right after Kimberly, hard act to follow.
Okay.
And then just before you. And
oh, wow. Well, that's, if you're going to be talking about that, that's going to be.
I'm going to talk about your father with him, and the compassionate leader, the commander-in-chief that I saw, the one that's not checking his watch as the caskets go by, the one that's not making it all about him like Biden did at Dover, according to these families. According to these families, he walked up and said, "My son died in combat too." Crazy. I mean, she said it was all she could do. Just
it's so insane. I know you have a heart out because you're actually going to go give that speech shortly, and I know they're kicking you out. I think that you have to wrap for that speech, but
I got to tell you, I just sat with the families this morning, and one of the moms just broke down, and she said the time she spent with President Trump healed her. Those are her words.
Wow.
She found it healing.
I will say, you guys actually know this. You've spent enough time with him behind the scenes. Like, I will say, like, his biggest political sort of liability is actually not Twitter or something like that. It's that he has so much real empathy. He doesn't like to show it because he thinks like, Putin's watching and it looks like weakness. He's old school that way. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm like, so I'm glad you're going to highlight it as a little, I guess, little breaking news. My daughter Kai called me yesterday morning, and it's like 7 a.m. I'm going on to whatever TV I was doing, and she goes, I got to speak at the RNC. I'm like, wait, what? Like, she's never given a speech in her life. I'm like, you want to get on front of live in front of 35,000 people and millions? That's your opening act? She's like, yeah, I feel really strongly about it after what I went through this weekend. I was like, called my dad. He's like, 100%. So I was like, here, take some of my time.
Grandfather's
so that should be, that should be pretty cool. I mean, I was just impressed. I was like, that just takes balls. I was like, that's a young kid who's never, she's not going into her junior year of high school. I was like, you're going to speak in front of, that's your first speech. So I'm pretty impressed. But I know you got to get out of here, man. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear that and see that. I'm sure it means the world to those families who are left out there that way. So with that, Devin.